All right, we appreciate you joining us here tonight. We've got an 8 o'clock update for you here, 8 o'clock Central Time, which is where the storm is coming in. From top to bottom, a meteorologist, David Neal. Brett Adair is with us, meteorologist also, and Drew Richards is with us as well. And, you got three meteorologists and a weathercast here. It doesn't get a whole lot better than that, does it, guys? Brett, how are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty well. I've been riding up and down the coastline today. Galveston, we had some of those rain bands earlier on the outer fringes of Beryl, and now we went down to Surfside as well. There's still some damage to the dune structures and a lot of debris down there from Alberto a couple of weeks ago that shot a pretty good sized surge up into the area. So we're likely going to move back down into that region here in just a little while and make our way to the south, where it looks like that this thing is going to come on shore probably somewhere between Matagorda Bay and Freeport, Texas down there, and we're going to be on that nasty right or northeast hand side of the system as it comes on shore. It seems like it's moving more northerly with the latest recon fixes, which is one of those things that we expected to kind of happen over time as it got closer to the coastline. So that's what we're dealing with right now, David, and we're finishing our preparations up here in Galveston, and then we're going to head to the south here very, very soon.
Brett, you and I were talking about this yesterday, about the fact that this looked like it was going to come into that concaved area of Texas where most of those bands would still be offshore, even though the eye got pretty close to shore. It was a situation where you had the perfect sort of symmetry here to where the concave part of Texas was going to help keep a lot of this out over the open water again. And now, structurally, I think, I'm not really sure if it's exactly because it's getting closer and closer to the radar there at Corpus Christi, but it is looking a little bit more organized now. The eye is looking a little bit more presentable on the radar imagery. I can show you the radar scope, actually, if we can go to that, because it's got a really good representation now that is southeast of Port Lavaca and moving northwestward at, they say, 10, 12 miles per hour. And like you said, Brett, I see a jog. I see a little bit of a jog now to the north somewhat. You got the old little friction maybe going on here with a storm that's slowing down and maybe sort of pinwheeling across the area there. It sort of looks that way, and the upper level winds have become a little less favorable as far as steering currents go. But I think that's a true movement, isn't it?
I think it's becoming that, David, and if you look at the upper level pattern, we've got a trough that's coming into the western portion of the Texas Panhandle, westerly winds aloft that are beginning to steer this system. We expected to see a curve more toward the north and maybe even a jog toward the northeast as after it makes landfall. It's going to be very interesting to see if that turn occurs any earlier than forecast. That's the reason that we're not ruling out pretty big impacts up as far as Galveston Bay, Bolivar Peninsula even, but Matagorda Bay, that big, huge rain band right there that's wrapping around the north side of the center is getting ready to start lashing portions of the coast from San Luis Pass down to the south, down near Freeport, Matagorda Bay, Rockport, down in those areas, north of Corpus Christi. You're going to get lashed with some of these outer bands, and that's where the higher winds are being picked up from recon too right now. So the center of circulation is not necessarily where your worst weather is. It's some of those large feeder bands that are showing up on the north side.
Yeah, as you see them right now, I haven't personally looked at SPC yet, but certainly they got to be thinking about tornado threat now for this area, maybe up in and around Houston.
Yes, they have a 5% tornado outline there, and I would imagine we're going to start seeing a tornado watch box at some time. We've seen a few tornado warnings today already across Louisiana with some of those outer band rogue storms that were going on earlier today. So that's what we're expecting as we go into the nighttime hours. So hopefully everybody is prepared. We've got a 70-mile-an-hour storm right now, likely right on the verge of a minimal hurricane. There's still some opportunity just because of where this system is at, since we are seeing the pressures begin to fall and the coastline is favoring a bit of a wrap-up. There is still some possibility we could see a strong Category 1, weak Category 2 before this comes inland, but we are losing time for that to happen. So I think our period for rapid intensification is coming to a close rather quickly now, but we're going to see some of those impacts again. Storm surge, heavy rains, tornado potential definitely on the table.
Drew, what do you know that we don't?
I know I'm watching chat, so we appreciate all you guys already here in chat with us tonight. If y'all have any questions, let us know. We will definitely get to those towards the end of the show. So just want to give a huge shout out to all of our regular family members, as we call you guys in here. Josh, good afternoon. Good evening to you. Lucinda, G's in the house, having some questions already about Mena, Arkansas. So again, you guys that are tuning in, if you got any questions or comments, keep putting those in chat. We'll go through our show. We'll tell you all the information. We'll tell you all the facts that you need to know. And then we will specifically take your questions here at the end of the show.
Yeah, we're looking at a storm now. Again, as Brett just said, 70-mile-per-hour winds. You know, you might as well. It's not officially a hurricane, but you only need a couple more miles per hour, and that's subjective at this point. And got a lot of reporting stations that are going to be right there on the coastal areas, too, in the hours to come. It's not like it's going into an uninhabited area of northern Mexico anymore. So we've got really good information that'll be coming in. So we'll get an idea of just how strong these winds are. But the outer bands, and there are a lot of them that are just now approaching the coastline. They're going to be 4 or 5 in succession coming into Angleton, Lake Jackson South, or all the way down into that Rockport area and Corpus Christi, maybe just skirting. In fact, we've got a live image from Corpus Christi, or this is the island out here, actually, South Padre Island, I think, right before dark, and you can see the thunderstorms are still offshore there at the moment. Waves, they're more, I guess, the actual vector here is going to be a little bit more parallel to the coast, Brett. I don't know. Have you seen any high waves today or anything like that where you are?
I mean, there's definitely a ton of chop out there this evening. We've seen lifeguards pulling people out of the water. They've been telling them all day long, do not get in the water. We've got double red flags flying because it's a very choppy and messy situation out here with rip currents. We're going to see our tides turn. That's something that we really need to look at. If you want to pull some tide charts here in a little bit, David, because I'm going to have to jump here soon. But our tide is going to flip just before midnight, and we will have an onshore tide cycle up until about 9:30 in the morning all along this portion of the Texas coast. So the tide cycle, I think high tides in between 9 and 10 a.m. tomorrow for this area. So that is kind of a worst case scenario that's going to occur as the system moves toward the coastline.
Yeah, I got a really good app for that. I just came from fishing down at the Gulf Coast, so I got a really good tidal map here that I can look at, a chart here in just a few minutes. We'll look at down into that area there as well. Brett, I know you got to be on the move, so we appreciate that. We'll be checking back in with you when we go to our continuous live coverage here in just a little bit. I know we'll be in car with you and Brisket Heath as we go through the rest of this evening and through the overnight hours tonight. So we'll be checking in with you. Go ahead and do what you need to do, and we'll check back with you. And also some other folks that'll be with us through the night tonight as well. We'll be checking in on Brian M. Fingers down there at the coast. You see some of his video from time to time here on LSM. And right now you can see some of the coastal areas there. Listen, this part of Texas is a little bit different looking than maybe for a lot of you. I don't know how much you know South Texas here. The beaches are a little bit different than they are across the northern Gulf of Mexico or even the western part of the Gold Coast. And at this point, you can see it's a little bit flatter there. And that sometimes can mean that, like Highway 98, a lot of times we watch that get covered over into Mississippi a lot of times on the northern end. And this is going to be sort of a situation there where it's very low. In fact, I'll try to pull up an image here in just a few moments. I think I've got an image of Queen Isabella Causeway and what that looks like from time to time going out onto South Padre, if that camera is working here in just a few moments. Actually, if you can pull that out right now, because we got a pretty good wind going there at the moment. This is South Padre, and you can see some of the signs that are showing up, and they're telling people about maybe not going across the causeway. I do see cars that are going, so they are still letting people go across the causeway. There's the bottom left-hand side of your screen. And, from time to time, we'll see that going on through the rest of this evening. But there are flash flood areas there. There's precipitation discussion here. Let's go through it here. This is a mesoscale precipitation discussion from the Weather Prediction Center, and they're just talking about the flash flooding that is likely there. The northern eyewall bands of Tropical Storm Beryl are now moving on shore. A consistent 2 to 4 inches per hour rate. That is a tropical rate that'll be coming down 2 to 4. 4 is where you can't really see, 4 is where the camera that's in Brett's car doesn't really show his face anymore. That's how hard it's raining. And it's going to be like that from time to time. You just see in these rain bands here that we're looking at what's going on here. But there's going to be plenty of precipitation there. And the rainfall rates being that if it rained for 4 or 5 hours, which it's as likely to do right there in that northern quadrant. In fact, we don't even need to be in a hurry here, Drew. Let's kind of break it down as to what we're looking at. If you go back to the, I started to say the Viper. This is not called a Viper. This is radar scope, actually, years and years and years. So this is radar scope. So here's our low pressure. Here's our storm. You can see the banding features right here coming in. You fill this up over here on this side, and now you've got a compact area of low pressure that is, kind of closed off. And when you get that sort of a situation, and we're still offshore, 90, 100 miles the center. And Brett and I talked about this yesterday. This is the perfect concave to keep these feeder bands, and they're called feeder bands because that's where the storm gets all of its energy from. These thunderstorms that are coming along with the low pressure center. So as it does that and it comes on shore, I can even see quite a bit of lightning that's ongoing now with this northern feeder band that's about to come on shore right here near Matagorda, over to Freeport that Brett was talking about, Jamaica Beach, and into Galveston, Texas City in the next few moments. That's going to be a teller. When that thing comes on shore, that'll be the first time that we'll really see the energy. That's where you're going to get your first winds. It'll be up above tropical storm force, and a pressure gradient that goes along with that will mean business. So let's hold this. I'm going to hold this picture here and show you what we're talking about. So you look at storms like this in quadrants. You break it in half right here. I had sweet tea, so I apologize. My hands are a little shaky. Quadrants. You got, quadrant here. We'll call this 2, 3, and 4. And always the right side, the upper right-hand side, because we're spinning counterclockwise here, the upper right-hand side is where you're going to see your highest winds. That's because the fetch remains out over the open water for a longer amount of time. Unabated, there's no friction out there, very little friction. So these winds that come in, first of all, are going to be the highest in that upper right-hand quadrant. And because of that, you're going to see your highest winds, probably Matagorda, over to Lake Jackson, even up into Texas City. Again, this is the low pressure center right here. I'm going to draw it old school. That's the way I was taught to draw it many, many years ago. So this thing's coming on short. Now, over here, let's just say right there's our quadrant again. We go down like this and we slice it up again. We go over here to this side. So knowing that the winds are coming onshore like this, now you have a completely perpendicular, not a parallel, but a perpendicular push of water. That's where the wall of water that we talk about is going to be coming in. That's where the highest amount of inundation is going to be, is on this upper right-hand side. Contrary to that, just the opposite effect will take place over here from Matagorda. Probably Matagorda up this way is where you worry most. But this is going to be an offshore wind on this side. Right now, it's already a parallel, if not offshore wind at Corpus Christi. So, that's what we're looking at. That's why your highest threat for flash flooding is going to be right there in the upper right-hand side of this. This is a well-formed tropical storm, Drew. I mean, it's not, it's not likely this becomes some big hurricane. I think it'll be a hurricane again at some point. They're out there now, and, it'll probably be called a hurricane again. I hope the difference between tropical storm and the name of hurricane doesn't change the way people prepare for it out there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, impacts are going to be the same. Like you said, Dave, it doesn't matter, those 5 or 10 miles per hour. The biggest threat that you guys down there need to prepare for, honestly, is going to be the storm surge. So you think about 3 to 6 foot, maybe 7 foot now is what I'm seeing the NHC saying in some areas, all the way up to the Galveston Bay area. I'm 6 foot tall, so that's over my head if you've got a 7 foot storm surge. So it doesn't take, like you said, Dave, one of these big category 3, category 4 or 5 hurricanes to get, water coming in over your head in a storm surge situation. So water, of course, prepare for that first, and you will have some wind damage, probably, some of the gas station awnings blown around, signs blown around, probably some localized power outages. But, thankfully, this is not the 160 mile per hour Cat 5 hurricane that we had down earlier in its lifetime. So the wind impacts, I think, will be pretty limited right to the coastline. But I think once we get this inland, Dave, the flash flooding threat looks real. So we had a question just a second ago about portions of Louisiana. You guys in Louisiana, you're not going to see the center of the storm, coastal Louisiana, that is. Northwest Louisiana, you might see the remnants coming up over the Shreveport area. But you guys in Louisiana are going to see a lot of impacts because you're going to have the feeder bands coming in on the right side of that storm that Dave just talked about, and you could have some serious flash flooding issues as we go throughout the day tomorrow. If you get set up under one of these feeder bands that's going from south to north, you may have hours of torrential rainfall and 3, 4, 5+ inches of rain, and as Dave just talked about, right front quadrant tornadoes in Louisiana. So we're talking about the landfall impacts. We're talking about the storm surge in Texas. We're talking about the wind impacts with the circulation in Texas, but you're going to have impacts all the way over into Louisiana. And of course, the inland flash flooding features as well, all the way up possibly in the St. Louis area as we get later in the week.
Yeah, we got again, you can see here satellite imagery showing that we've got a little flare up going on. It's a nocturnal flare up, which often happens when we see these sort of situations where at night, you get the ability for the air to rise more rapidly. Again, the thunderstorms to pile up. We call the central part of that the CDO, the central dense overcast of the storm, when it starts to wrap around a center point or an eye. Again, you would be considering that this is a strengthening storm a little bit, and I see that being the case here with what we see. Let me see if I can pick out another. Well, the satellite images tell a lot of the story here. And again, it's going to be that upper right-hand side. Let's see if we can do this. So the meso still looks kind of the same. This is a composite look at the radar. Both radars there at Corpus Christi, and also the one up in Houston, Texas. There, God, I drank too much tea at dinner. I knew I should have backed off of that a little bit. I'm on my third, fourth glass here, and I got another one through. So. Anyway, that's where we are at the moment. Got lots. Look, the other part of this, I got to mention this. There's a big storm over here in Atlanta, Georgia at the moment. Sandy Springs, and there is a severe thunderstorm warning. It looks like they're at the moment moving on the south side of Atlanta, Peachtree City, Rockdale counties underneath a severe thunderstorm warning, as well as DeKalb County there on the eastern side of Atlanta, Georgia. And I know we had some other thunderstorms out there as well that had tornado warnings with them a little bit earlier. We did have a little bit of damage just between Vernon and Lawton today. Frederick, I think that's going to be wind damage, 60-mile-per-hour winds there that was showing up just a little bit earlier, 75-mile-per-hour wind. Where was that at? Reported by the public. And then some hail. I think that's going to be 1-inch size hail there just south and west of Geronimo. In Oklahoma, still got a severe thunderstorm warning there too. Wynwood and Davis underneath a severe thunderstorm warning. Both those counties there at the moment with the storm that's coming out of there. That's going to be a damage threat there. Coming into Davis, it looks like in the next few minutes, going to be a severe thunderstorm warning. FDR will take care of that, I think. So we still have some thunderstorms out there. These are not associated with our tropical system at all. This is basically where we had it yesterday in a severe thunderstorm watch box that extends roughly from just outside of Oklahoma City south through to Denver City, and Hobbs is still intact there. There's also a severe thunderstorm watch that encompasses I-25 eastward across Colorado at the moment, and some pretty strong thunderstorms there. The red dots, got to get rid of them.
And Dave, while you're doing that, Jarvis, if you want to take, I don't know if you can, I've got the storm surge, the peak surge forecast map from the National Hurricane Center while you're flipping that toggle off, Dave. Let me switch to that, Jarvis, and you can pull that up full, hopefully. There we go. And in the little box over there on the left now, you can see that's our maximum storm surge forecast zoomed in just for the Louisiana and the Texas coastline. So again, all the way south from the mouth of the Rio Grande River at the border, northward through Baffin Bay, all the way up to the Port Aransas area, you're looking at about 1 to 3 foot maximum. Corpus Christi Bay, that includes you guys. And then from the Port Aransas area northward to Port O'Connor, 3 to 5 foot max. And then once you get into Matagorda Bay, 4 to 7 foot, all the way up to the San Luis Pass area just south of Galveston Bay. So again, that maximum storm surge, 4 to 7 foot there in the orange shade of color. And then again, northward of San Luis Pass, all the way up to the Sabine Pass area, 4 to 6 foot, including Galveston Bay. So again, that is 4 to 6 feet above normal water levels. And as you heard Brett say just a few minutes ago, that don't remember, Dave, does the NHC, I don't think they factored tides into that. So that's just normal water level. So yeah, the tides coming in will be even on top of what they're saying there in the forecast. Look at you guys all the way over there from Sabine Pass at the state line of Texas and Louisiana, eastward in Louisiana to the Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge, possibly up to 1 to 3 foot of storm surge inundation. So yet again, I think that's going to be probably the biggest story since we're talking about a strong tropical storm, low end hurricane, more so than the wind.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jarvis. Appreciate you taking that pull.
And you can take my app here too, because I've already checked with them. We can use this thing. It's a tide, an app that I use for tides. Please come in, start working here. The Matagordo Bay entrance there is what we're most interested in, and at the moment, again, the high tide is going to be. It's going to be pretty important here as we move along through time, because if this push of water. And, the push of water is not going to be short term when it comes to this either. It's going to be a long term sort of a situation here. But let's see. For tonight, the actual tide is going to be low tide at 10 p.m., it looks like, for the opening there at Port O'Connor. So we've got a tide that is falling right now at the beginning of the bay there. So that is actually good news. With a falling tide. And as we go through the night tonight, you can see it is rising toward 11 o'clock tomorrow morning to the high tide. There are 2 tides now, so during the day, and it's a high tide at 11 a.m. tomorrow. But the tide comes up, and it's only a foot. If you go to the left side of the graph, you can see it's only 1 foot of a tidal change. It's not like it's a huge lunar sort of a situation at the moment, because we are at a crescent moon, so... Not the worst case scenario there in Matagordo Bay out of that one. And that's at the entrance of the bay. Galveston Bay, let me see where the tide station is going to be, right out here at the beginning. That's going to be Galveston Pleasure Pier is where this is taken from. And again, it's a low tide situation going into the night tonight. Going into 10 p.m. tonight, it is a low tide with a waxing crescent. And during the overnight hours and the early part of the day tomorrow, it's a high tide at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Right there is your high tide showing up. So we've got to keep that in mind,
winds Drew. At 39 sustained at high tide. So that's good to see, Dave. That's awesome.
Yeah, southeast wind at 39. I didn't even see that. Love this app, by the way.
That's awesome. I love it too. I'm gonna have to download that app. That's awesome. But
here's my fishing app. They've done really well. I know these guys really well. They do a great job. So that's at Galveston Bay, and the rest of this is going to be offshore. So the tides aren't really going to matter that much the further south we get. The one down here at Corpus Christi, again, this is going to be right there. I think it's Port Aransas, actually, Aransas Pass. And I think that's going to go into, see, these are all west-southwest winds that they're expecting here. And this forecast is going to go off of NHC. So.
Dave, I'm going to quickly hit a few comments. Again, we talked about Louisiana. So somebody's traveling from Tennessee down to Louisiana tomorrow. They'll be fine more than likely for most of the trip. But once they get into Louisiana, looks like around the Patterson, Louisiana area, heavy rain, flash flooding, possible some spin-up tornadoes once they get down there. We also had a question earlier about Arkansas, the Mena area. This storm's going to be a lot weaker once it gets to Arkansas, so you will see some winds, a little bit breezy conditions, nothing crazy, some heavy rainfall as well up in the Mena, Arkansas area. Eastern parts of Arkansas may have, again, a low-end tornado threat. There is a Storm Prediction Center outlook already for that eastern side of the circulation, but we'll just stay tuned. We'll keep you updated as this storm continues to move in. Other than that, we've got Dallas-Fort Worth in the house watching tonight. Whizzle Man, always here. Glad to see you,
Wiz is with us, huh?
He is. Anthony, Dave, I tried to get chat up on your right screen. I don't know if it worked or not, but I tried to get restream or the chat room up for you. If you
I do see it. I do see it now.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Ziggy. Yep. Thank you for that, Ziggy. We were showing high tide just a second ago as well. And somebody said the storm is a joke. Yeah. It's not a Cat 5.
Who
But
said
that don't mean
that? It's my mother-in-law
I
on
don't
here
remember.
again.
I don't remember who said that. But if you're
Or
in
was
the
it
path
joke?
of the storm
Gene. Come
and you're
on,
not
Gene.
prepared, the storm may not be a joke to you guys.
Gene,
It
if you
can
lose,
still.
did you ever live down there, Gene? Let's just call Gene out because
There you go.
Gene.
Yeah,
Gene, you ever
it's
lived down
now you're
there?
right. I'm
I've been.
happy we are dealing with a Cat 1 hurricane.
Yeah.
So,
You lose
compared to a
power.
Cat.
If
Yep.
you were to lose power down here and not get it back for a week or so for some reason or another,
Mm-hmm.
it's the worst thing that ever
Inconvenient.
happened to you. I've been
'Cause
in these
Dave,
situations. I mean, I've been in storms. I've been in hurricanes when I was at school at FSU. I've been in hurricanes and tropical storms too. And it really doesn't, the wind and that kind of thing. That's one thing. That's the thing we always look at. Are you in
Yep.
the tornado? If you weren't in the tornado, you don't get my sympathy. Well,
Yep.
even if I was a mile away and I lost my electricity and I lost everything, everything else, there's a great human effect that goes on here, and one that can really last a long, long time, and especially if you got kids in the house, that kind of thing. We don't wish this on anybody.
Yep. Bingo. But hopefully we keep this thing, like I said, a lower end hurricane, because guys, remember, I mean, we still have time. It's, about 100 miles offshore, and
Yep.
the waters are warm, no wind shear. So, we could see this thing really strengthen up to landfall, and that is expected. And Dave, I've heard a lot of people say, you've been in more storms than I have, but I've always heard everybody that chases these hurricanes and tropical storms and everything say there's a significant difference with a strengthening storm at landfall versus a weakening storm at landfall. I've heard people say you can have a Cat 1 or a Cat 2 that's getting stronger when it's coming on shore, and that seems a lot worse than a weakening Cat 3 when it's coming on shore. I don't know if there's any truth to that or not, but I've heard that, multiple times. I think it has to do with a lot of the dynamics in the system, and the feeder bands are obviously a lot more mature and strong when you do have a strengthening system versus, a dying system if it's getting sheared out or whatever. But this storm is going to be strengthening all the way up until that eye wall gets over land. So, that may factor into, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's a dud. Oh, it's a bust. It's a weak storm. Well, I'm afraid some people may be a little bit surprised early tomorrow morning when this thing comes roaring, onshore.
Absolutely, all of the above. There's not one thing I disagree with right there. I mean, it is kind of what it is, and again tonight we're already seeing new thunderstorms, towering thunderstorms popping up on the south side of this, on the north side of this. It's pretty easy to see where the center is now. It's truly unorganized over the last 24 hours, 36 hours during the day yesterday, especially coming off the coast of the Yucatan into the Bay of Campeche, and today. We've seen a little bit more organization as we went along. Obviously, we have an anticyclone that is above this system now, and that is the outflow. That is the needed outflow for this engine that's actually sitting there into the western Gulf of Mexico. The engine is such that it has to have an exhaust system, and that's what the upper level winds and an anticyclone or a high pressure do, is they take this system that's sucking in all of this moisture and all of this heat, latent heat from the ocean, the water temperatures, which are into the mid 80s here across the area, and using that to fuel these thunderstorms, towering thunderstorms on each side of this system as it goes upward and outward. And you can see that easily in the satellite imagery here, the outward flow of this stuff, which just by satellite representation says there's a dude of a high pressure sitting up there into the upper levels that's allowing this thing to go ahead, at least tonight, and strengthen. And I think that's going to be, I don't know, we'll have to, as soon as I can get off of this page, I'll look at recon. Brett's the recon guy. He normally knows the minute they're in and out. I've flown in a couple of them, so I should know a little bit. I should be more in tune with what's happening there.
I just pulled that up, Dave, and it looks like we have a plane in there now,
Yeah.
but the last vortex message was at, let's see,
JMJ.
a little bit over an hour ago. Looks like 7:18 Central Time, and at that point, they were still getting a 988 millibar in the center. Looks like they're just a little north of the center right now.
Yeah.
So we're probably about to get another update on that minimum central pressure. But just had a question about Victoria, Texas. You guys are going to be on the west side of that circulation as it comes in. So you guys will see the northerly winds, heavy rainfall bands coming in, but your tornado threat is going to be lower, not zero, but lower, being on that west side of the circulation there in Victoria, Texas. MJ asking about Corpus Christi. No, you're not quite out of the woods. You do have the tropical storm warnings, and I believe you guys may be on the edge of the hurricane warning just to your north as well. So you're definitely not out of the woods. Some storm surge in Corpus Christi, but not quite as bad as what we're looking at to your north. Gusty winds, again, probably out of the north, heavy rainfall, but you're going to have an offshore flow there in Corpus Christi more so than an onshore flow.
I mean, it's
so
actually a beautiful sunset. Do you see it there? That's
yes.
the bottom left-hand side of South Padre Island.
Gorgeous.
A beautiful sunset there. If you look at the cloud representation, all of the thunderstorms, they truly look like they're going to stay offshore. I don't see any westward movement to the thunderstorms anymore, Drew.
Yep.
At least on satellite. I'll look at the radar in just a few minutes, but it looks like a beautiful sunset there at Corpus Christi, or at the causeway that goes over to South Padre Island.
It's a sharp cutoff, Dave. Notice it on radars. Where those rain bands stop going west, there's going to be a really sharp gradient of the heavy rain and the gusty winds to absolutely nothing on the west side of the storm.
Let's try the crap radar here real quick. And I don't even think it rains there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think it rains in Corpus Christi. So, but out of the woods, if you mean, do you miss the brunt of it? Sure you do. Absolutely. Yep. And there's no chance this turns around and comes back that way. So
exactly.
If there were somewhat of a sure bet, now you might get some of the banding that comes in around this, but it just doesn't look like it's like Drew said. There is a very sharp contrast of a cutoff, and that's got to be super dry air over here. And that was one of the reasons this thing was prohibited from really strengthening during the day. Yesterday was the dry air coming in from the western side and then wrapping in around the storm a little bit. And I don't think there's any way. Let's see, where does my radar start here? I'm going to go backward to the first one. It's at 5:53, and then going all the way up until 8:33. You cannot tell me there's not a little bit of more of an a northerly jog.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. David says he's a fellow Seminole. No, MJ. I'm sorry. MJ's a fellow Seminole for you. There you go. David says, what's it look like for the path heading up to Pennsylvania? You guys will have some remnant showers from this thing, but it's going to really die off rapidly once it gets inland. So, maybe a little breeze, 10, 15 miles an hour by the time it gets all the way up there to Pennsylvania. Some showery weather, but nothing crazy for you guys up there in the Northeast.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me go back to that.
And Dave, I'm going to talk while you're working on that real quick, guys. Stay tuned to all the social media platforms. So just real quick, our plan for the evening and the overnight hours, we are looking like we're going to do the long form coverage of this storm coming in later tonight. Not a whole lot going on now. So we just wanted to jump on, do another quick update with you guys here this evening before everybody started talking about getting ready for bed and getting obviously back into our Monday morning routines. But if you are up, we encourage you to tune in to all of our social media platforms later tonight. You'll see that push notification go out. We will be firing up our long live coverage stream for the landfall of the Hurricane Beryl, what likely will be Hurricane Beryl by then. We'll have all of our storm chasers in the field feeding back live video. We'll be here in the studio with Dave. Jarvis will be behind the scenes as well. We probably are not going to sit here and talk to you for, 5-6 hours straight. That would be kind of boring, but we'll be bouncing back and forth with our chasers in the field. We'll be taking their audio, letting you ride along with them a little bit. And then we'll be doing updates here in the studio as well as needed kind of thing. So, Dave, I see you got the rainfall amounts pulled up that you were working on.
Pull up that little phallic looking area there on the bottom left-hand side. It's it's the rainfall QPF for the total that is, I don't know, I think that goes out. Is it ending Sunday, July the 14th? So it's a 7-day total there, and this is going to be the WPC model here, and what they're talking about basically is the right-hand side of a landfalling tropical storm hurricane, but that could shift either way. It could shift a little bit further to the east. In fact, folks in Memphis, Darren Jones, my buddy there, who's the I guess he's still the chief dude there at the Memphis National Weather Service office. They were sending out notices today that they were concerned about where the cutoff was between the very heavy rainfall that could be there into eastern Arkansas or western Tennessee. And then you can definitely see there as you move further northward along the northeastern part of Texas into southwestern Arkansas, there's as much as a 5-7 inch total there that is possible should the track of this storm stay to the right like this, and especially should it have rain banding that's ongoing with it like we currently have. And if you look back at the radar scope again, I can show you that the center is becoming a little bit more recognizable once again. If you take the storm as a whole, let me get rid of that real quick and look in this. I'm just going to zoom into it. So the area of no precipitation is the center. And if you kind of look at a couple of these radar images here, right there's the center. Super easy to pick out the center. It's right there. So then I can sort of back out of this. And now we can know exactly how far away it is from the coast. And we're like 85 miles away from coming to the coast. Should it go, that's a little bit to the northeast. Let's go a little bit further to the north and say that it happens 93 miles away. So the further north you go, the more that landfall will be delayed. As if landfall really meant anything. That used to drive me nuts, Drew. Can I just vent about this for a moment? Hold on.
Go right ahead while I keep reading these comments.
Just give me 1 second, because I'm about to vent. I'm about to go off.
While you're drinking your sweet tea, yes, the last comment before you vent, very concerned about Houston getting flooded again. I don't think we have a Harvey repeat. Let me just make that very clear. The storm is moving once it gets inland. It's moving kind of slow, but it's not a Harvey that sits there and parks over Southeast Texas and dumps 40 inches of rain. Could we have a crazy, 20 inch of rain measurement in and around Houston? Sure. If we get one of those feeder bands setting up right over the city, we're going to have some massive flooding issues, yes, in Houston. So, I know you didn't say Harvey. I said Harvey, but I know there's been a lot of chatter about, Harvey? I did. There's been I've seen so much on social media about, this is going to be a repeat of Harvey. Look, no storm is the same. Yes, this storm has a pretty serious flooding potential for you guys there in Houston, but this is a totally different, but good. Go ahead on your rant, Dave.
I want to do this too because I love this site. This is you probably, let's see. Guess you're gonna have to zoom into this jar with it somehow. But anyway, Houston, right after, during Harvey, but right after Harvey, they really put a lot of money into this flood map that they have here for the county, for Harris County, and they have just a massive amount of reporting station. I guess they end up being pretty small there on your screen, but this is a 2-day total because I know they had some really heavy rain over the past couple of days, and you can see there's some 3 and 4 inch totals already. There's a 4-inch total that took place just a couple of, the majority of that was 2 days ago. I think I saw that, and you can see it rained like a 2.52 in 1 hour. I love this. I love this whole thing. This is such a great resource here. So they've already had a bunch of rainfall, but it is Houston, Texas. It's right there by Galveston, so you can drop a lot of water off really quick. Get rid of it pretty quick through the system there, through the bay, and get it back out. I was part of a Hurricane Danny. God, when was that? 96. I was down at the coast in Hurricane Danny. It was my first, it was 96. October maybe, I don't remember. But it rained 21 inches in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And I didn't really know it because it's the sand, and it's not like 21 inches anywhere else in the world. It is sandy. Now it can pile up. I do remember because I had to go do a story, Drew, about an alligator that got away from the zoo because there was a lot of water.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember the alligator's name, but a lot of zoo animals did get away. But my point is you can handle a lot of water there, not 50 or 60 inches like we had during the storm. But we're going to be able to monitor it very, very well. What an amazing system they have there in Harris County.
Dave, real quick, Ramp Rat 92. What is the projected wind speed for Harris County? Just looked at the HRRR model right before we went live with this update. It's predicting you guys could easily have 80 plus mile per hour wind gusts there in and around Houston and Harris County. So it was showing some 80, 82 wind gusts maximum for the whole period of the storm. So obviously the higher wind gusts are going to come in your rain bands as they move in. But yeah, if you pull up the HRRR, and Dave, I don't
I'm
even
gonna
remember
do that.
what model run or what hour it was, but I looked at the max wind gust, and yeah, there was printing out some 80. So again, I think that would probably be on the higher end of your gust. That's not a sustained wind there for you guys in Houston, unless disclaimer, we see explosive, last minute deepening of the storm, and it pops up to 100-mile-per-hour sustained winds, then you could easily have, 80, 90, 100-mile-per-hour gust in Houston. And I think that's a absolute worst case scenario, however.
Can you take this full screen, Jarvis, if you can, so we can sort of see it there?
Perfect.
Does that help us see it? Yeah. So this is right now 7 o'clock, and if we move forward a little bit in the clock here, these are wind gusts projected, and let me move it upward a little bit. Let's see if I can do that. And there's obviously the center of the storm where the HRRR is bringing this in. There's some 40s and 50s there by 11 o'clock tonight. By 1 a.m., there's some 50s and 60s. Actually, let's just key in on that. By 1 a.m., you can see this is what the HRRR is saying with the eye of the storm still offshore there. We'll say just, east of Victoria, it looks like. Those are the wind gusts. And I wish I didn't have to back out of this in order to move it, but I do. Going up to 3 a.m. again. Still the center of the storm offshore, but there's some 70-mile-per-hour winds now that are possible. These are gusts again. And then as it comes onshore, and with this, it's predicted to be coming onshore right there just to the southwest of Lake Jackson. That's going to be Matagordo Bay, right in that area there. So just to the east of Victoria. And that's when on the right-hand side of this that we were talking about just a little bit earlier, the right-hand side, where the fetch is more elongated, you've got more room out there coming in out of the open water that'll be coming on shore, perpendicular to the shore too. So you're going to have your highest water inundation there in both of those areas. And that's when there may be some 80-mile-per-hour gust. Again, projecting that to be a continuation coming onshore. There's the HR. This is the HRRR, which is not a hurricane model, but when you get within,
Correct.
12, 14 hours, it bears watching. And that's when some of the higher winds could be coming into the Houston area. And this is, so look, 50, 60-mile-per-hour winds. You do that sometimes just in an afternoon thunderstorm, just in a regular afternoon thunderstorm. Thank goodness you had some the other day. I always used to look at this like it's survival of the fittest. If you've gone through a month without any storms, then oftentimes you can build up a lot of debris in the trees, dead limbs, whatever the case may be. And the amount of damage can be worse than if you've had previous storms or previous winds.
And remember the derecho, we're just coming off there in Houston too, just a few months ago, Dave, with
Right.
100+ mile-per-hour wind. So yeah, good point.
So 56. You get that now. Sustained winds. I don't know what we're talking about. Wind gust. We have like sustained winds here.
Take that on a few hours forward, if you will. That's all right. You done switched.
I'll
I
get
was
back.
curious
Well,
I was curious if it ever went higher in Houston on that
yeah,
particular
well,
run.
I was building up to that, but it was like
Yeah.
it was like we'll be back with more.
Because
in
you
just
went.
a
That's
moment.
about as far out as I went in time, and I was just curious if we ever went higher than that.
7 a.m. No, it's down. So there's a 93 there at 7 a.m. That's kicking. I mean, it's right there on the coast. Still an eye. 70-mile-per-hour winds at 9 a.m. in Houston. Even up, I mean, if it's just to the west of you, there's still some 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts possible up until noon tomorrow. If this is the track, this is the worst case scenario for the Houston metro area out of a Category 1 hurricane. It's kind of the worst case because you're right there on the east side of this, whole situation here. And the east side is where, We really expect there, if there's going to be damage or that kind. Sabine River really westward is what we're looking at. Lake Charles westward, and going up to the 1 o'clock hour. Still there with some gusts. All the banding still looks like it's pretty intact. And then what we'll be looking at this point are, Drew, I would expect during the middle of the afternoon hours, the middle part of the day on, there's going to be a tornado threat over here, the Sabine River, Lake Charles, there along I-10. I've seen
Dave,
this
we talked
before.
about some of the dry air, that's been in the storm, and that really enhances that tropical tornado threat when you get that drier air mixing with an on landfalling tropical system. So, yeah, I'm worried mid-afternoon through the evening tomorrow afternoon, East Texas and Louisiana, we may have a localized, pretty serious tornado issue with some of these feeder bands.
And you can see now the total QPF is pretty high as well out of the new HRR. There's some 7, 8-inch, 9-inch Lake Jackson. Should that be the case? Should that be the track that takes place? And again, you shift this a little bit to the east or west, depending upon where the actual center of the storm comes in. And there is a very, very distinct and marked change between being on the east side of the eye and being on the west side. Look at this. Maybe not even any rain in San Antonio at all, with 60, 70 miles away, getting 4 or 5 inches.
And Dave, can you go up to the Dallas area and move your map? Because we got a question about Dallas that we'll get to in just a second. And I don't want to speak incorrectly of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. So the worst, of course, is going to stay east. But I'm just curious how much of those rain bands come through Dallas, if any, or they may all stay southeast. So
let's just look at it. Here is Dallas.
Yeah, the question was a Floridian here. Twin is in Dallas, Texas, moved there from Alabama. She's never experienced a tropical storm or a hurricane, trying to keep her calm. Will Dallas get any bad weather?
If this is the track that is taken, Dallas again on the western side of this whole thing, and not likely. Not likely at all. You can see, can you take that full screen again, Jarvis, if you would, and I'll show you. Here is Dallas. I don't know if you can see it, but here's Dallas right there, center screen. That's the big D. I'll back out just a little bit here. So the low is just down there, right? Well, can't hardly see it, but there's the low, and that's a track that goes away from Dallas. And any kind of reference to bad weather after that would be further and further to the Shreveport, Texarkana, coming north into southwestern Arkansas. Again, that's where we would be really watching this. Now, the thing that we look at, by the way, let's talk about this. The circles, those are lines of equal barometric pressure. And when you're talking about low pressure, that's the center. That's the storm center, 997 by that point. So what we're looking at here is the wind flows parallel, flows in between these bands. If you see your city there, like Shreveport, the wind is going to be coming in from the south and a little bit east of south. So it's a southeasterly wind that will be coming in. On the other side of this, Dallas would be in a northerly wind, a little bit of a northeasterly wind. Waco would be a due north wind, whereas over here at Alexandria, it's going to be a wind that comes in out of the south. So the lines of the wind has to flow in between these lines, and the tighter the lines are, the gradient is tighter, and the higher the winds are going to be.
Cat Milk says, "Good to hear. Thanks for that update." She said she'll let her know it's clear for a Waffle House run in Dallas. So appreciate that.
Yeah. When is it not?
Exactly. No, very, very minimal impacts as you saw there. It's honestly, if you weren't paying attention to the weather, which a lot of people don't, you probably wouldn't even know, Dave, that there was a remnant hurricane or tropical storm just to the east of Dallas. That's how big that western cutoff is with these systems.
Yeah. And there's low
Bean
pressure
Berry
north
in the
and
house.
West. Berry. There's low pressure to the northwest of you too. If there's high pressure to the northwest of you, that'd be a decent little strong wind in Dallas, but you got low pressure to low pressure, so not so much going on there at that point. But I I really hadn't looked a whole lot at modeling at that point. What else do we have as far as, so that's the her. The NAM is probably updating here as well, although it's barely out.
While you're doing that, good shout out to Sarah. Always good to see you here in chat, Sarah. Yeah, and one more question here. Do you know if any feeder bands will hit eastward towards Baton Rouge? Without even David pulling it up, yes, you guys in Baton Rouge will see the eastern feeder bands feeding up off the Gulf of Mexico, coming up through the pretty much all of Louisiana, maybe as far east as the New Orleans area. So the further east you go, New Orleans eastward, you're probably not going to see major impacts, but anywhere from Baton Rouge north and west, you guys will see some flooding, some possible tropical spin-up tornadoes as well.
So the new NAM, this is just another model, the North American model here that has pretty much the same thing we just saw from the HER. I think they're both somewhat identical in that early tomorrow morning between 3 and 6, we'll say. Storm coming on shore there, the center of the storm anyway, but these adjacent 80-mile-per-hour winds that will be coming in, 80, 90, these are gusts, again, at about that time frame, with 50s and 60s into Houston. Those are pretty prevalent by 4 a.m., 5 a.m., storm onshore, and there's a gust to almost 90 at Lake Jackson that is in the model, and so on and so forth. Now, this model is a little bit further west of Houston, but and I think immediately the one thing that I noticed is the western side of this is still intact, and I don't think that looks like still a major hurricane or Category 1 hurricane there. And
I just
probably
think that's overdone because it is the NAM. So
it is the NAM. I got to learn how to breathe again while I'm on television.
Here we go. Says, tell David I said hello from Fayette County, Alabama, and we're waiting for the cows to lay down. From Grady Evans.
Grady, good to talk to you. For GLE, what Grady's talking about is I made many years ago. Actually, started in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I grew up in the South. I grew up in Alabama, and my grandmother used to tell me that when the cows were laying down, it normally meant that there would be rain by the afternoon, and it was pretty accurate. And I used to do the weather in both Chattanooga, Tennessee for 10 years, Birmingham, Alabama for another 11 years or so, and 12 years. And we actually had a cow index. I mean, people who owned cattle would call in. I had one telephone number dedicated to it. People would call in and say, one woman used to call in, and she was, if a lot of her cows were laying down, she was always very excited, but she'd leave me a message. She'd go, David, today I came in and 48 out of 51 cows were laying down today, David. I just thought you'd want to know right now. And we would relay that kind of stuff on the air because it was pertinent to a lot of people and sometimes actually true. Somebody asked me about my chicken. If you're not aware, I had an encounter with a chicken. It's probably not the best way to start that out. A couple of years back, though, I came across Mount Eagle Mountain up in Tennessee, and I found a chicken. Brought it home with me, and we both were sort of on the mend at the time, and I brought the chicken in. Her name was Penelope, and Penny was quite famous. In fact, Penny had millions of views on a place called the Dodo, and she used to sit over here to my left quite often, and I had her for about 4.5 years. She was probably 2 or 3 years old when I got her, and Penny passed away about... This is going to upset Michael Beard because he didn't know. But, Penny passed away about 3 or 4 months ago. So I have no Waffle House in Oregon. Look her up, though, if you want to. Look up Weatherman Rescues Chicken. Google Weatherman Rescues Chicken sometime. Not now because we want you to keep watching.
Yep.
But Penny had a lot of followers.
One last question. Katy, Texas, just west of Houston, Max. So we just showed those wind gusts. So realistically, I think you guys are probably looking at 60 to 70 gust easily, depending on last minute intensification there. You may have a few gusts, 70 to 80 range there in the Katy, Texas area. But realistically, I'm thinking, 60 to 70 is probably pretty good range for wind gusts for you guys.
Very, very true. What else can we look at that we haven't looked at? Has NHC said anything else? I haven't really seen. Let's see what NH. Pull it up. Yeah, can you pull it full screen? Where is he? Brian. Oh, he's down there at the coast. He's on the water somewhere. Is that foam or is that rocks?
Looks like he is in Bay City, Texas.
Bay City, Texas. I'll look it up. Hold on. Bay City, Texas.
Yeah, it looks like we've got Bob Pack in Bay City and Bryce Shelton as well. Just an update on all of our chasers. Nick Smigo, nope, he's out in Colorado. He's chasing the severe weather in Colorado. Looks like we've got Tyler Kurtz in Matagorda. And then Michael Beard also in Matagorda, Texas.
So Bay City is right there, just north of Matagorda, and on US, it looks like I don't know, it's Texas 60, and coming in from Markham and Blessing. I would say that is a driving rain. That is a tropical rain. Currently, let's see, is there a new?
Let's see. We talked about storm surge earlier, and yeah, maximum of 4 to 7 foot there, right where the storm comes on shore and points north and east. So lower end 1 to 3 foot, higher end 4 to 7 foot max storm surge.
So he is M finger is right here. Let's see. Yeah, if you go back to my iPad too.
And Dave, I think you can go to the livestormchasing.com website, and you can show everybody how they can follow along with our streamers out in the field and watch their live video. Of course, we're going to end our update here in just a little bit, but between us going off now and us coming back later, we'd love for you guys to go check out livestormchasing.com. And if you have a Apple device, Android device, tablet, cell phone, does not matter. You can download the free Live Storm Chasing app, and you can see all their live videos. So if you go to that on the website, you see orange dots, that's location only. And if you see the green dots, you can zoom in, see live radar, and see all of our chasers out in the field. Click their green dot, and you'll see their live video pop up on your screen. So it's a pretty cool site.
I didn't know about that. Nobody told me about that.
Tyler, our programmer up in the Northeast, he has really been working hard on this, and we've got some more enhancements coming out soon on that. So sometimes if it loads like that, sometimes these guys are in a lot of weather, so they may have a bad cell phone signal or something like that. But you can click the little eye over there on the left-hand menu to see their live feed. You can share that with that little arrow button if you want to share it to your social media. And you can, of course, see their location on the left-hand side. It shows you exactly what city they're in. So
I do love the disclaimer here that says streams are intended for mature audiences, both visually and audibly, because I already almost cussed right there because it didn't come across. Let's see. You're absolutely. You said if it's green, there's video.
If it's green, yeah, there's video, and that may be it. There's a weird iOS, like when you're using the website. So my iPad does what your iPad does, Dave. Okay. So if you've got
we know where they are now. That's all.
You can download the app, so it's better if you download the app.
Okay, I'll do that. So, y'all didn't tell me. All right, so let's go back. Before we go anywhere, let's go back now because the HGX. Well, it's hard to tell which radar I want to use here. Little bit of dry air now looks to be coming in on the western side of this. The eye wall looks to be eroded just a little bit. Again, there's not a lot of time here for this thing to do a whole lot more. And there's a northerly jog here. I haven't seen a discussion or anything recently from the Hurricane Center, but you don't have to be a meteorologist or any kind of a degree to anything to see it, because I can draw a line on where it was and where it is. and you can see it following that line off to the north there just a little bit. So the banding that's coming in here, Drew, are we gonna? What can you use to find out? Are there stations there that would be reporting wind gusts yet?
Yeah, I can pull that up real quick. Give me just a second.
You can see where we can have, because we ought to have some decent wind gusts now, especially Matagorda, I think, which has a station, and there should be some, pretty gusty winds coming in there now. A lot of lightning out there too. Now look, one of the things that happens here is that tornadoes often, during tropical systems, tornadoes are actually reported after the fact. They are, although we got great radar representation here, this is where the curvature of the earth takes a toll here. These are not supercell thunderstorms that are out there into the open plains that are 50,000 feet tall. These are low top thunderstorms. They're very low to the ground, so the radar beam often goes over any spin that takes place and does not represent very well, or only does so for one scan or two.
Dave, I don't see an airport weather station or a weather service or a station, anything in Matagorda, believe it or not. So it may be offline, but right where we have that band from Port O'Connor all the way up to the Cedar Lake, don't have any reporting size. So back in Port Lavaca, we're gusting to about 25 knots, which is close to 30 miles per hour. And then Galveston looks like gusting to 25 knots as well. And that's the highest wind gust we have. Corpus Christi, never mind. 32 knots out of the north, Corpus Christi Naval Air Station. So that's a little bit over 35.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So from Port Lavaca to Matagorda to Bay City and Lake Jackson right now is what we're looking at, the newest or the latest rain band that'll be coming on shore here and going a little bit to the north and northwest across the area. Again, the video that you're seeing upper left-hand side of the quad box that we have is from the Bay City area. That's going to be right here, which is just now seeing, I mean, if there's probably a let up. These are tropical downpours. You'd be so surprised at how this happens because 1 minute it is coming down unbelievably. So did you see that movie, Forrest Gump? Remember that scene when they're in Vietnam and the rain is coming down, and what did they say? It was coming from the ground up.
Yes,
there was some. That's what this looks like right now. I mean, when you're in this stuff. This is when at the times I've covered hurricanes. When this stuff comes in, this is when I'm going, can I go home tomorrow?
It's wild.
Can I go home tonight? Because it's so thick. The air is so thick. The humidity is so high. And that's what we're talking about. You lose your power in this kind of stuff. It's the most miserable time of your life.
And, Dave, we had somebody in chat just a little bit ago, so they picked up 0.7 of an inch of rain in an hour the other day in Houston.
Yeah,
that's nothing for some of these tropical rain bands. You can pick up an inch in 10 minutes sometimes when you get these coming in. So
we're going to see some of that in Houston. That's what I love about that Harris site, is because it updates like by the quarter hour, I think, or maybe every 10 minutes. It'll give you a running total in a graph, and so we're going to see some unbelievable totals on that website here in just a little bit. Some of the graphic stuff that we'll be able to see from there. Matagorda, I'm sure it's just bucket loads there at the moment. Freeport, Oyster Creek, Treasure Island, Jamaica Beach, and then coming to Galveston, theater near you in the next couple of hours or so. And again, when we come back, we're going to be joining Brett Adair, who'll be live from his vehicle. A couple of other people, like I said, we got Bryce Shelton, we got Bob Pack, and Brian Enfinger. Is Brian the one with the vehicle, cool vehicle? He got a really cool.
Yeah. He is. He's got the multiple cameras on his vehicle that he can switch back and forth with.
Yeah. And we need to be able to, I don't know if he's parked. Has Brian ever talked to us on the air? He needs to talk to us on the air. Brian needs to talk to us on the air. Because I'd like to hear. Yeah, I'd like to hear him talk.
And I know we've got Michael Beard in chat too, so all these guys. We'll see if we can't get.
Is Michael down there?
He is. Yeah, he's live right now from Matagorda. I think it said. Yep, he's in Matagorda.
Like he was from his living room. Michael Beard. I've known Michael since he was this high. He wasn't even that tall. He was knee high. Um, yeah, we'd love to talk to any of you people who are down there. Excuse me, photojournalist Michael Beard. Did I just introduce him wrong or something? Because I think his agent just texted me.
Hey, I've got the one and the only Mr. Brett Adair calling me right now, Dave. So I'm gonna go on mute just for a minute.
All right. He wants to complain about his meal, I'm sure. Jennifer McMahon is with us here tonight. That's nice to hear you. Hush it, Josh, Michael Beard. Michael, we want to get you on here in just a little bit. If you give us a buzz, does he know how Jarvis to get on with us? Because I'd like to, if we can talk to him a little bit. But again, you're watching this storm as it goes northward now. Very clearly, there is a center of rotation beginning to show up on both of the radar images. But right there's the eye, the center of the storm, the eye of the tropical storm, i.e. hurricane. We'll check in with the recon data in just a few moments because they'll let us know. Recon is only going to fly up until the storm gets near land. They do not fly over land for obvious reasons. So we'll only get recon data, and then we'll have to depend mainly on land data on ASOS sites and the like, and to get that information. But right there is the center of the storm, so it's very easy to know exactly where it is. There's no guessing anymore. There's no real waiting for recon to tell you. Sucker's right there, and it is 71 miles, 71.6. Do what? Say that again. Oh, okay. So, let's see. Let's do this one thing. We're going to do this scientifically because I was just bragging that we got great radar representation. So that's 908. If we go back to 808, let's go back to 808 right there. And the center of the storm was right there. And we go forward, we can see how far we've gone. So in 1 hour, we've gone about, 16 miles. We can do our own little assessment of how fast it's moving to the north. And it's probably like a more northerly motion at north-northwest motion at about 17, 18 miles an hour. And if you look at it now, we're right there at the last point. And if we're going northward, 17, 18 miles per hour, you can do the math there with me. We're still looking at a 3 a.m. sort of anywhere from 3 to 4 a.m. landfall, which I hate to say, because everything's going to happen between now and the time that the center of the eye wall goes over the area. I don't think it's going to be a clear area there. It might be, but more than likely it's going to be kind of cloudy, occluded sort of a situation when it does come over land. But we're looking at 3, 4 a.m. before it does do that. And then all the pundits on TV will be going, landfall has officially happened. And then there's all kinds of conjecture about what is landfall. Is landfall when the center actually comes over? Is landfall when the edge, the northern edge, touches shore? I'm not bitter. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. And we're going to take a little second here. We're going to regroup. We're going to get Brett's video on with us. Drew's popped out for just a few moments, but we're going to get all that together. We're going to get our resources together here, our sources that we'll bring into you coming up in the hours to come. And we'll probably go off here for an hour or so. And you get a little alert. I hope you've subscribed to the channel. You'll get an alert. And just roughly, let me say that Corpus Christi, you are fine. This is going right on by. Corpus Christi, I saw you even had a beautiful sunset. Rockport, Port Lavaca, you're right on the edge of this, but the Lake Jackson northward area to Houston. It's about to rock and roll there for you. There are 3 distinctive bands that I see here at the moment. There's one, right here's one, right here's another that'll be coming on with the eye wall. 3 very distinctive times I think you're going to see really super high winds that'll be coming into the area. I'm meteorologist David Neal. For Drew Richards, Brandon Jarvis, Brett Adair, everybody else. We'll be back probably in about an hour or so. And thank you for joining us. Tell your friends, your neighbors, your mama. Call everybody and tell them that we're going to have some cool video coming up here in just a little bit with tons of information. And we'll talk to you later.